So the Carolina Panthers just paid former New York Jet Robby Anderson $20 million over 2 years to join their team, and I love this signing actually. I haven't loved a ton of what Carolina has done this offseason. I haven't hated all of it, but I have been a little bit questionable about certain decisions, but I really like this signing. I think it makes a lot of sense. Matt Rule used to coach Robby Anderson, and let's just jump into what I like about Anderson and what I think he can bring to this Carolina football team. I do think that while, Anderson does get a lot of credit for being a deep threat, that's not all he can do. Like, take a look at this play, for example. It's going to be a cover 2 zone, and that's where Anderson is, and that's where he's going to try to get to. The red circle, that's where he wants to get to, and obviously he's the guy who has circled in yellow. And there's several ways you could go about trying to get through that gap in coverage. I mean, this is, sometimes you'll hear people call it the honey hole. This is a very good way to beat a cover 2 zone, but obviously it's not a huge window, so Anderson does have to try to make sure that he makes the window as big as possible. The most simple way you'll see somebody do it is just run like that, run around the defensive back who's lined up with you. There then will be a little bit of a window when you get past the initial defensive back, but still in front of the safety, or then a quarterback can try to make a throw. But you are now relying on a quarterback to make a throw and fit it through that window. So Anderson is going to try to make things easier for his quarterback here by running around the opposite direction. So he's going to run like that, and now you don't exactly know which kind of gap he's going into. He could be crossing over the middle, which is something you will also often do against zone coverage, so that is something Cincinnati has to be wary of. So there's several things that could happen here, and for Robby Anderson, he's just doing a great job of running this route, because really, he doesn't want to allow that safety to realize what's going on, close in quickly, and, closing up that window where it will be much more difficult for Darnold to make this throw. And I mean, it's already working out pretty well. I mean, he's almost on the hash marks right here, so this part is actually working out relatively well for New York, but at the same time, it's not necessarily perfect either because, at this point, there still is a chance that safety could run over, crash in, and make a play. But what you're going to see Anderson do here, which I just love, this is just a great piece of attention to detail, of making sure that you can make that window as big as possible. Watch how he does one quick move further, which allows there to be a pretty big window where he was wide open. Just that extra move is just one of those little things that most guys don't do, but sometimes it can just be perfect because that just allowed that safety to stay closer to the middle of the field just for one extra step, and that was honestly all that Darnold needed. I'm not even sure if he would have needed that for there to be a window, but it made the window bigger, which just makes things easier for your quarterback. And, listen, people talk about Teddy Bridgewater. Oh, he can't throw the ball down the field, so why get a deep threat? Well, that's why, because Anderson can still make these types of plays where, Bridgewater can throw the ball 15 yards down the field, otherwise he wouldn't be a quarterback even in college. Like, he can make those types of throws with consistency. So I do think that, Robby Anderson running those types of routes will just have a huge positive impact for Carolina, and I especially think that, Christian McCaffrey is now going to be on the same team as Robby Anderson. You could see a situation where teams run a lot of zone coverage because they are expecting there to be a lot of running plays. They don't want to get caught in man on a running play. And because of them doing that, having a guy who can beat some zone coverage, run good zone busters like Anderson can, it makes sense to me to bring him onto your team. Now, one thing I did just touch on that is very true is one of Anderson's best attributes is his speed. He's a great deep threat. Like, watch this play. It's just going to be a one-on-one matchup. He's on the top of the screen, and he's just going to go deep here. Of course, the most important thing in these types of plays is usually just the first step, but what Anderson is going to do is just sidestep around his assigned man. He gets a little bit open, and that's all he needs. He's able to just outrun his assigned man. It wasn't even a perfect throw, but he was able to come back and make that catch. And Anderson can do that with consistency. So for a guy like Teddy Bridgewater, honestly, you don't have to hit those constantly. You don't have to be a great deep ball thrower to make those have value. As long as just the opposing corners that are going up against Anderson have to be weary of something like that happening. So, as long as Bridgewater could just make one of those throws with some consistency, now you do have to fear it. If, once or twice a game, he can hit one of those. And then Anderson can do a lot more underneath and can help set those types of things up. So I do think that just because maybe on paper the matchup doesn't make a ton of sense, doesn't seem like a matchup made in heaven necessarily. At the same time, I do think this pairing can work out very well as long as Bridgewater can just hit a couple of those, which, I think he can. Just because he doesn't have that giant rocket arm doesn't mean he can't make an occasional deep throw. So, and also deep throws are subjective. A 30-yard pass is a deep throw. Every quarterback in the league can make a 30-yard pass. So, I think they'll find ways to use his speed to their advantage. I also think one of those ways is just with quick routes like this one, which is a route I imagine that Bridgewater will love to throw to, where once again it's going to be a one-on-one matchup, but this time Anderson is going to run just quickly over the middle of the field. Very short, simple route, but because of his speed, watch how he doesn't create any contact at the line, just runs straight up, and he's able to get open, not through really anything other than just, I'm faster than you, I'm going to outrun you, and that's what Anderson was able to do. So that's what someone like Anderson can bring to this football team. A lot of people will kind of say, wait a second, this isn't a perfect match, so therefore, why are they making this decision? But you know what? Sometimes there's almost all of the time, there isn't going to be a match made in heaven where you can find a player who perfectly fits your system. Sometimes you got to just find talented players and then try to build the system that way. And also, we don't know exactly what Matt Rhule is going to do right now because we haven't seen him coach an NFL football team, so we don't really know exactly what he's going to do. And one more thing that's worth mentioning about Anderson, let's take a look at this play, and it's going to start off as almost the exact same play before the ball is snapped. But what's going to happen right when this route keeps going is that you're going to notice this is much better coverage this time. Last time Anderson got easily open. This time not so much. It's going to be a very contested throw. But Darnold, he's under pressure a little bit. He's going to decide to make a throw in that direction anyways. And Anderson is going to make a pretty good catch in traffic and is able to hang on to that one. That's not an easy one to make, and, he has good hands. He is good at making those types of catches. He's not one of those guys who, in traffic, will drop a lot of those ones. So I do think that factors in as well. If there are going to be a lot of short passes, which there might be with Bridgewater, he can help Bridgewater out with those passes. His speed will help Bridgewater out. I think Anderson is just a great fit. Again, I don't know how much you're going to rely on him. I don't think he's that great number one. I think he's more of a great number two guy. That's kind of where I have him at. But at the same time, who knows? Now that he's not going to be with the Jets anymore, he might actually be in a much better position to succeed. Carolina's offensive line last year was mediocre, and I'm bringing that up because the New York Jets offensive line was atrocious. It was bottom 5, maybe bottom 3, maybe bottom 1. It was really bad last year. And when you look at that kind of difference, when you have a deep threat, hey, he'll have more time to get open. He'll get open on more routes. He's in a much better situation, especially when you think about the fact that New York, not only did they have a terrible offensive line, but for several of those games, Sam Darnold had mono, and so, now he has nobody throwing it to him, and he still, is a pretty consistent 800 yards guy, maybe even an 1,000 yards guy if you get him in just an okay system. So, to me, I like this. This is what you want to do in free agency, which is kind of buy low on somebody who has a lot of potential. It seems like this is the kind of guy who could become a true number one receiver, but at the very least, you're paying for a good number 2 receiver, which he is, so it's already not an overpay, but it has a chance to be a great deal. So these are the kind of moves you want to make in free agency. I've criticized a couple decisions that Carolina has made, but I love this one. It makes sense to me. One thing I probably should mention about their line is that they did get rid of Turner, but at the same time that they added Okung, so who I actually think is going to be pretty good this season. I don't think he's washed up as long as he stays healthy, which is an if, but if he does, I think they could have a really, really talented team, especially on offense. Their defense has some work, but that's kind of the NFC South way. Go all offense, no defense. And then the stupid Saints ruined it by having a good defense too. But yeah, I like this move. I think it'll work out for Carolina. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.